Welcome to this week's episode of Build Value by Choice. I am your host, Nana Bonsu. I am the president and CEO of Infinite Horizons Incorporated. Our website is www.infhorizons.com, where we help business owners increase the value of their business so they can free up their time and be able to transition using whatever options that they desire. Every week, this podcast talks about a different topic of importance to business owners. And this week, we are going to be talking about succession planning. I have with me a guest today who has been through succession planning before. I'm going to read a little bit about his background, which is impressive. His name is Joseph Seetoo. Joseph is principal and senior vice president with over 21 years of experience. Prior to joining Morton Capital Management, since August 2007, he's also served as the director of investment research for Georgina Asset Management, LLC, over in Santa Monica, California. He began his investment career with Sanford Bernstein and Company in 1998. He's a chartered financial analyst. And additionally, he's also a certified exit planning advisor, a certified financial planner, and a member of Provisors. He's the president of the Conejo Valley chapter of the Exit Planning Institute. Interestingly, he also earned his black belt degree in Krav Maga and was an instructor for nearly a decade. He successfully completed the Sea Lift Kokoro Camp 37 in June 2015. He's married with 2 daughters and resides in Agora Hills, California. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Nana. It's great to be here and looking forward to our discussion today.
Wonderful. I mean, Joe is a hero of mine. I believe you like a SEAL or something like that.
No. I did a civilian course with Mark Devine,
right,
called SEAL Fit Kokoro. That's 3 days for wannabe civilians who want to go through a course on what they do with the Navy SEAL. So it was a lot of fun. It was extremely painful.
Well,
it tests you mentally and physically beyond belief. So I would encourage you to sign up.
Yeah, okay, maybe too late for me, but I'm not as young as I look. But anyways, so you've been through succession planning before in your own career. I mean, in addition to actually, you've walked the walk. You don't just advise owners on how to do succession planning. You've gone through it. Could you describe just your journey? I mean, I think I gave you a little bit of brief background into your bio.
I joined our company now in 2007. But prior to that, I had first started my career with a big Wall Street firm, Sanford Bernstein. They came out of New York, had a Los Angeles office that I joined in the late 90s and worked in private wealth management there for several years. I actually left and started a registered investment advisory firm in 2000 with one of the partners. We ran that for about 7 years. And as I was, graduating in my career, I had done the CFA program and was looking to sort of put myself in a position to be an advisor. And so I joined Morton Capital in 2007 as one of an employee. And for a number of years, actually at that time, Lon Morton, who had founded the firm, had recently sold to a bank. We were a wholly owned subsidiary of the bank. With the great financial crisis of 2008, the bank ended up being recapitalized and bought by a private equity group. And so we were brought along as part of that transaction. Fast forward a couple of years, and in 2011 or 12, Union Bank came in and bought that asset. We were still part of Union Bank now for until 2013, at which point Lon and some of the other principals at the firm were able to buy the company back. And at that point, 5 of us were owners. And so that was my journey into becoming a partial minority owner in the business. And really over those next few years, started getting more involved as I had built my practice as a financial advisor here, working more with business owners. And through that event, and when we actually, Lon passed away in 2017, seeing the transition that we had gone through, really an internal succession where the management had been handed over to really a couple of my other partners were running more of the day-to-day. I was doing a lot more on the business development side and recruiting. I'd recruited in a number of other advisors, seeing the intersection between what it takes being a business owner and a successful transition, being on the backside of it, again, as a G2 owner, second generation owner. I really think that he did a phenomenal job in terms of transitioning the business to others, both from an equity and a management standpoint, but then also, setting himself up and his other partners up for success, his family. We have a leg up in the sense that being financial advisors, we're pretty well versed in estate planning and tax and insurance and cash flow planning. Those are the services we provide. So that was a little bit about my journey, but it helped really sort of prompt for me this desire and to help business owners close the gap, right? Because they're so busy running their business that so many of them don't have a chance to think through what thoughtful succession planning really looks like, not only for the business, but for themselves personally, for their family, for their staff, their clients, their suppliers. There's just a myriad of different factors that go on.
Yeah, so it's it's a bit more complex than it seems on the surface. It's not just the owner, but all the different relationships and yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge ripple effect, right? If it's done well or if it's not done well.
Yeah, and because two things, I think couple of things that I wanted to kind of pivot off of what you just said was, number one was because you guys are in the financial advisory business, you had the knowledge. So ordinary business owners will need that knowledge. That's a gap, and that's where you can help with sharing some of the. And the second thing is the statistic. Given that you are a certified exit planning advisor, where the exit planning institute have this statistic where I think that only like 12%, like 30% are able to transition to the second generation, and like 12% to the third. So that seems like a pretty low statistic. That maybe what you do, I assume, is one of the motivations to help you kind of improve those numbers.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, I'm a firm believer. I admire business owners. They're a different breed, right? Where many people see risk, they see opportunity. They are willing to really just say to the world, "Hey, I have an idea. I want to bet on myself. I believe I can do something to improve the quality of my own life, of my community, of my clients." And it's really sort of thread into the fabric of our country in terms of entrepreneurial, the capital system. And I can't think of a better way for, individuals who want to create something to have a platform to do that. And so, but when you see the statistics, right, around how 50% of exits are not voluntary, right? Whether it's divorce, disagreement, distress, disability, or premature death, and I've seen a number of that. You can't help but I feel like a sort of a drawing to help redefine what a financial advisor can do, right? I think we are blessed in many ways and have a responsibility to help owners because we are in a position of a lifelong relationship and we have the knowledge, right? I think the accountants and the financial advisors typically are two professions that can really help take succession planning to the next level. And so I want to be part of that. And I want to help business owners they sacrifice, right? It's a big risk. And so how can we help them succeed? Because when we help them succeed, we help our community succeed. We help their clients. Again, we're benefiting, I think, our economy and our society, not just monetarily, but on so many other levels as well.
Yeah, so many unstated ways. I mean, just healthy relationships. It's much bigger, much deeper than just financial. One of the things that number one is because. And I know you used to have a podcast, Ripcord Moment, and one of the episodes where one of your guests mentioned that leadership is really important. And you mentioned that your leader that did the transition, the succession plan, really made sure that it was as smooth as possible. what was, because in general, like a lot of times, a lot of business owners, and you touched on this, they're so focused on your day-to-day running of their business that,
Yep.
this succession plan thing doesn't show up as a to-do list, or it's not urgent, at least to them, until it's time to, retire. All of a sudden they wake up one day,
Sure.
they realize, oh, I got to get somebody in there. So what was it that, this person, your leader, knew that allowed him to successfully prepare somebody, and how long did it take for them, for him to be able to do a successful, smooth transition, and what can business owners learn from that?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to when a lot of it comes to a degree of humility in many ways. And while I think, and it's something I think that many owners need to understand and take time to really reflect. One is I think getting clear on their intention. Do they have a lifestyle business, or do they have a business, what I call transferable enterprise value, right? Where they ultimately want to create something that is greater than them as an individual. And if they do, they have to really, I think, do some soul searching into what that is, and understand that the legacy of part of the process is creating something that's going to outgrow them as an individual, right? And so to that end, in order for that to be successful, they have to set up the systems and the people that will run the systems and the business, so that the business can run without the owner, right? And so in order to do that, then they have to, once they come to that realization and they've gone, they've mentally made that commitment, then it becomes, again, I think, making sure that they set up time to look at and work on the business from a strategic standpoint, not just day to day, in the weeds, and empowering those around them to take different responsibilities and accountability and ownership, whether that's actual equity ownership or ownership of the projects, really, of different tasks. And that's a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling, I think, for many of us, because you're letting go, right? There are, mistakes, if you will call it, or we really try to refer to them as opportunities for growth. And what do we learn through the process that naturally causes a bit of discomfort, right? But that's the only way that we as humans grow, is when we go through a period of discomfort, and then we become incrementally better along the way. And so I think that was one thing that Lon did really well, was he was able to think through, like, hey, I want something bigger than just myself. And he was not afraid to delegate. And I think he was able to realize what he was really good at, which was being a visionary. He was incredibly gifted with individuals in terms of sales, but the sort of day-to-day management wasn't necessarily his cup of tea. And so finding other people who could take that and leverage their strengths, those tend to be the kind of owners who go on to have successful exits.
Now, one of the main things that, because there are different exit options, and this succession planning, in your case, it's more like internal, like,
Correct.
and so what are the triggers, or you'll start with, people's motivation, the founders' motivation, like you mentioned, if they want to create, whether it's a lifestyle, or let's just say they've decided they want something bigger than themselves. How do we know why an internal succession, internal transition would work, best? And I'm sure you're going to mention culture, but what's the difference between transitioning to employees and management versus transitioning to your kids?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a very complicated question. There's a lot
Yeah,
to
no, sorry.
unpack. No. I think it's a fascinating one. I think, one is assessing, right? Because for many owners, the dream is to pass it along to the kids, right? I think they really have to have, again, a real hard look, an honest assessment around what's the, what are the kids' desires, and not just assume. And they've got to be willing to have an open conversation about that. And I think also be willing to hear from the next generation, their kids' perspective, without taking offense or putting pressure on them. But then I think simultaneously, they also have to assess the skill set and the experience of those kids, or that next generation, and their ability to actually run the business, and really we're meeting the business on where it is at that life cycle, right? I'm working with a client right now, for example, like they're in a very high growth trajectory, right? And so that requires, I think, a different set of leadership skills, a different set of management skills, even technical skills. And so you've got to align where the business is of itself, right, with the kid's desire to want to do this and their capability. But I also think you got to assess the alignment between the existing management team and how are they going to feel about, bringing in new leaders. And those are going to be tough conversations. And so I would imagine that there's just got to be a period of time of gestation and trust that is built. Certainly, that's on the one hand, is your question. If you're looking at a succession event where you've got, you're leveraging your existing management team, again, I think many of the same questions come into play, right? Were they there? They were there as a good employee, as a good manager, but are they really wanting to step up to the plate and take on this financial responsibility? Certainly, there's a lot of upside. But if they're actually buying the equity of the business, how are they going to finance that? Is that a liability that they want to take on? Do they have the desire to be an owner and everything that goes with it? And then again, are they the right management team for where the business is at that stage of the life cycle? So there's a lot to really think through. And I think to your point earlier, you brought it up, why this is not something that can be done in a very short period of time, at least for most companies. There needs to be a runway. And that was one of the points that was made to me by Chris Passmore in our discussion on mandatory succession, that it can take years for this to be implemented properly.
Yeah, I think Chris mentioned on the Ripcord Moment podcast that he hosts is, you got to kind of date first before you get married. So
yeah, I think that's a wonderful analogy.
Right. What is the number one myth or misconception that business owners have about succession planning?
I think one is even the words that we even use as professionals, we use the term exit planning or even succession planning. And I think that in many ways does a disservice to the owners, that it's something that's this sort of one-time event right at the end. And while there are pieces of it that feel like that, many of the what I've come to learn, and even some of the training we've been through, many of the business principles, they're just good business principles in terms of how to run your business, is how to thread that through. It's not just at the end, right? And so this idea of delegation, of setting up your systems, of the ability for the business to run without you, even though you still own it, right? But in terms of not every decision has to go through the owner, nor should it, because if it is, then you don't have a business that's transferable. And inevitably you run into burnout, right, more easily.
Right.
So I think that is the biggest misconception, coupled with, again, the time that it's going to take. I think for many people, it takes a lot longer than they're anticipating. So my strong suggestion is, and one of the things, we've actually developed a consulting practice where we're working with owners years ahead of the transaction, so that we're helping them think through, right, essentially the 8 different areas of a business, the 8 functional areas, right, whether it's the sales, the marketing, the people, the operations, legal, finance, et cetera, are each of those areas running as optimally as possible. And if you can start to do that early on in the life cycle of the business, guess what? It's going to set you up for better growth if that's your trajectory, right? Or it's going to put you in a position to be as optimal. I mean, I can't tell you the number of unsolicited offers owners are getting these days from a strategic buyer, a private equity group, because they have their own agenda of rolling up different companies in that industry. And, look, the reality is that if you're doing these things along the way, your ability to be stronger at the negotiating table just goes up exponentially. You just increase your options infinitely, right? You're opening up all different kinds of doors, potential doors for yourself as an owner.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately it all ends up making your company more valuable, because you mentioned about growth. There's also mitigating your risk, and all of those
Absolutely
things factor into valuation.
Absolutely.
What is the first step that business owners need to take when it comes to being ready for succession planning?
One of the very first things that we do is, we'll have a preliminary discussion and sort of feel out what they want to do. But let's say they've made the commitment to do something. We do a pretty deep dive assessment. We use a system. It's called the VOP, Value Opportunities Profile Pipeline, and it's a very in-depth diagnostic tool that, again, we'll sit down with the CEO and their leadership team, and depending on the size of the company, this may be a half day or a full day exercise, but we're doing a deep dive at looking at, again, the leadership team. What's their frequency of, what's the planning that's done at the firm of the company? What do their operations look like? What is their people strategy? Where are they at from a legal contract standpoint? What's their finance strategy? What is their sales and marketing strategy? So again, those 8 functional areas of the business. And by having multiple views in the room, right, you're able to get different points of view. You're able to look and uncover some potential blind spots that either the department heads or the owner may not know exist. And then from there, right, then we are in a position to come back and say, hey, look, your operations is really good, right? But you're really lacking in your people strategy, or your strategic planning perhaps really isn't as buttoned up as it should be, right? Or you really, you want to look at doing this with your marketing. So then you start to lay out actionable items that the owner and their team can start to take to then drive value into the business.
Oh, that's great. Where should people focus their efforts if they want to ensure a smooth transition, both the short term and the long term?
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to really one is getting a clear idea to the extent possible on what your North Star is, right? And a lot of this comes down to strategic planning, both for the business and for the owner personally. If they, I don't know if it was Mark Twain or whoever it said, like, if you don't know where you're going, any road's going to get you somewhere else, type of thing, where if you don't have a clear idea on where you're going, then you're just going to kind of muddle along day to day. So getting that North Star in place personally, both personally and on the business, you got to do. So that's kind of like starting with the end in mind. Then, I'm a strong believer in, again, doing this assessment where you really have got to be open to being vulnerable on what are your strengths and weaknesses. Again, on the personal side, have you quantified, right? Are you knowing what your cash flow is on a personal basis? Have you done your estate plan, right? Do you know what you need if, you want to retire in 5 years? And starting to get those things dialed in. On the business side, again, that assessment that I discussed will really help us pinpoint where you are today. And then once you have those two sort of data points, then it's much easier to craft a plan to take you from where you are today to where you want to get to. The other thing I would suggest is, again, creating a team, both, right, obviously think about it, your team in your business, but your external team of advisors, and getting them to meet on a regular basis with you so that they're communicating. So whether that's your financial advisor, your accountant, your estate attorney, your insurance professional, and then externally, you're going to need to think about, again, more of if you're looking at an investment banker or a business broker for a third-party transaction, you may need a business coach, right? And so while we're acting in some capacity here around that, there's definitely areas where I think bringing in perhaps a business coach might make sense. But assembling that team of professionals who can help guide you along the way would be something I would also strongly encourage owners to do.
Yeah, no, and that sets us off nicely for what I'm about to promote, which is that's what essentially this show I consider it to be like a virtual external advisors. I mean, in lieu of the format is meant to kind of show the paradigm that you just mentioned, right? Because every week we talk about a different aspect. Like this week we're talking about succession planning. Next week we may be talking about something legal or something related to cybersecurity. So, but the different perspectives for the different areas really helps the owner to think differently about what options they have and just thinking outside of their business and how that fits into the overall life and master plan. So that's interesting. What advice or final, thoughts do you have for business owners?
I think one is get educated, right? There's a lot of resources out there. Don't be intimidated, even though the process can feel overwhelming, and it is in many ways. Start to get yourself educated early, right? Podcasts, Googling, talking to professionals, exploring different options. Get into maybe something like an EO or a Vistage group or another group where there are other owners and that you can just bounce ideas off of. Or again, not be afraid to ask those questions that you just really don't know the answers to. So start early, get yourself educated would be a couple of the critical things. And then going back to what I mentioned before, having a structured process in place helps to really move the needle. Don't feel like you got to tackle it all on your own. You got to reinvent the wheel. Find someone who can help you think through a methodical process to help you get, once you've got that North Star identified, or maybe even through that process, that North Star becomes more clearly defined. And then don't be afraid to do an assessment of where you are today. And then that will, just getting the ball rolling alleviates a lot of the inertia around, well, I'll get to it later. And I think that brings me to my final point, which is don't wait until it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Start some aspect of the process sooner than later. And I can tell you, the owners that do that go on to have much more fulfillment, much more flexibility, much more freedom, and a much more a deeper sense of peace of mind.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate. And I actually, just to add to what you just said, we have a free business valuation on the show's website. When you go to infhorizons.com/podcast, there's a button there on the top right says get free valuation. It's free.
Yeah.
You get a free report on different areas of your business, and you can bring in different advisors to help you tackle the different aspects of the business that need to be handled. So that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was great. How can people get a hold of you or follow up with you if they want to contact you to get some more?
I'm on LinkedIn. So Joe Seetoo, I'm on LinkedIn. They can certainly feel free to call me. My direct line is 818-591-6219. They can subscribe to the Ripcord Moment. That's a way I'm promoting information not dissimilar from you. Or they can email me, first initial, last name, so jc2@mortonwealth.com. We've recently rebranded.
Okay.
And so they can reach out to me there. Okay. Our company website's mortonwealth.com, and my information's on the website as well.
Okay, great. And we're going to have all of that in the show's notes as well. So, people shouldn't worry if they're not able to write it down. Well, Thank you again. And certainly appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you so much. This was great.
All right, wonderful.